Yes, yes. Okay, so this session and tomorrow the e-commerce section sort of like connected. In other words, we can think of it even doing e-contract. It's sort of a e-business and then related to e-contract related to e-business, which then and e-commerce is part of e-business. So they're all related. Basically what is happening is e-contract has been going on even you realizing you have been part of it, okay? And today for this next 1 hour, we will simply talk about what it means contract. And because so many contracts are signed even without knowing it, there's always a dispute that arises. Each one you cannot go to court, but then you want to get it resolved. And so there are a lot of alternative dispute resolution mechanism Indian courts allow, so we'll talk about that as well. Can you hear me well? It's too loud or, okay. Okay, so we'll try to give you a feel for what's it all about, what are the laws guiding this area, as well as, what are the pitfalls and so on. Okay, so the purpose of this session is understand what constitutes an electronic contract or e-contract and the importance of e-contracts in today's digital economy. And of course, as I said, you're going to assess the pitfalls in the development and enforcement of electronic contract. And of course, if you sign any contract, there's always a chance one or more parties don't follow the specifics of the contract, and then you have a dispute. And so, because the courts are so overwhelmed, you can't be suing each time. You have to look for other alternatives to settle the dispute. Okay, so we'll look into those things. Okay, so first of all, what is a contract? The contract definition actually came from the Act of 1873. Obviously, during the time, the British were still ruling India. Okay, it was called the Indian Contract Act of 1873. So basically, contract is a legally recognized agreement between two or more parties giving rise to obligation that may be enforced by the court. In other words, it has a legal component. You cannot say, I signed a contract, but I won't go to court. It is subject to, state enforcing it. Even it could be among friends, among brothers. The moment it is a contract, it comes under the purview of the government. Okay, so that's something, you got to understand. So to be enforceable, okay, this is the key, an agreement must include mutual assent. All the parties should agree to it, which usually means either they sign it, or in the olden days they were also using finger-based signature. But it has to be, all the parties have to agree to it. And also, when they agree to this, there is also a concept of, payment or consideration. In other words, you provide some service, you provide some real estate, and you get some money. In other words, it could be bartering, you give something and they give something, or it could be one of the parties could be giving money, okay? So the important thing is goods, services, money, they exchange hands among the parties. And the capacity of the parties, a contract is valid only if the person who is signing it is sane. okay, and it's not under duress. You're not forcing the person in deathbed to sign something that you want. So the capacity of the parties is important, and the court will look into it in order to uphold the contract. And the age. I think India is either 18 or 21, I'm not sure, but 18, okay. So you have to be that age. So one of the things is if you buy software, click software, you agree to it and you are not 18, is it enforceable? Most likely not, okay. And also the legality of substance. You cannot get a contract to kill somebody and give them 100,000 rupees, okay, or sell a drug, or beat up somebody, okay, so those are all illegal. In other words, the moment it includes any or all illegal activity, it is not valid, okay, so a mafia guy cannot go to court saying I gave him 2 lakhs, he didn't finish the job, okay. That's not allowed, okay? So that's the important, it has to be legal, whatever taxpayers. Okay, now if you know what a contract is, what is an e-contract? The e-contract has to satisfy all the aspects of a legal contract, okay, but done online. Okay, now governed by the Indian Contract Act 1872 and Section 10 of the IT Act 2008. In other words, e-contract became a legal contract since 2008 after the IT Act. Okay. Basically IT Act, what it provides is, it recognizes some of the documents can be electronic. Some of the, okay, and it also recognizes the signature can be electronic signatures. And what also it means when a signature is a valid signature. How do you prove the signature, electronic signature is done by the person who claims it is? So there is a lot of framework you have to put that around that for authenticity of the signature, or authenticity of the person who is signing it, as well as the authenticity of the document that supports it. Okay, so IT Act provides all this legal framework to support these concepts. Okay, so the IT Act also includes what we call digital signature as a form of signature subject to its adherence to authentication requirements prescribed under the IT Act. Okay, so IT Act, essentially supports what is universally known as the digital signature using a private key, or relies on a digital certificate requiring a public infrastructure, plus it allows other forms. For example, you can even scan your handwritten signature. Technically it is allowed if you can prove it is your signature and not somebody put it, you are the one who put it. Okay, so every time the question is authenticity of the signature, authenticity of the person who signed it, and okay. One of the issues that is still not very solved is the notion of stamp duty. In India, whenever you sign something worth value, I think it's 1,500 rupees or some small amount, anything above that, you have to pay stamp duty to register with the government, okay? It is not clear whether, electronic e-agreement requires stamp duty. There are cases where they said you require stamp duty, especially Maharashtra, but then it's still not very well resolved. When do you have to have a stamp duty? How do you pay the stamp duty when you do everything electronically? Okay, so there's still although it has been in existence of more than 15 years, what is the role of stamp duty in making something legal, or it doesn't matter? Okay, so that's why I put the word question mark. Do you need a stamp duty to make a contract legal? In India, the moment you put stamp duty, the contract is really can be enforced. Until then, it cannot be. Okay, because you're paying the government to resolve later complication. So they get your money upfront. Okay, you can think of it as a revenue or whatever. They want you to pay so that ahead of time whether or not you get into trouble. It's not a court fee, but it's a court fee prior to even going to court. Okay. Now, what is the digital signature? Okay, so this course being more on the legal side, I won't go into a lot of details, but assuming you know something about cryptography, let us understand what a digital signature is. So basically, digital signature, what happens is, say you have a document that you want to sign. And what you do, you take the document and then you produce what you call a hash of that document. Okay, so the hash of the document and the document you sign with what is known as private key. So in other words, in the public, there are two types of cryptography. Again, I don't want to go into a lot of detail of cryptography, but basically the kind of cryptography is used is what is called public key cryptography. There are two types. There are two keys in a public key cryptography for every person. The private key, only that person who has it can sign it or can use it, no one else knows. Then there is a public key. So when somebody signs with the private key, when somebody encrypts with the private key, the other person can decrypt it to get the original document, and also vice versa. They are mathematically related. At the same time, they use such a very large, mathematical concepts like prime numbers, so that it is hard or almost impossible to get the public key from the private key. Okay, to get the private key from the public key. Public key is published, but you can still get the private key from the public key. Mathematically, generally impossible. So anyway, the signer signs with the private key, both the document as well as the hash, and then encrypt it with the private key and then send it to the other side. What the other side does is basically the verifier side or the receiver side, they decrypt it with the public key. Okay, so they have the original document as well as the hash. And then what they do is they apply the same hash function on the decrypted document. If their hash same as the hash they received, okay, you can be sure it was not altered during the transit. You can also be sure that since you are able to decrypt it and get the same hash of the original document, it also means the person who signed is the one who has the corresponding private key, and then it is that person who you are dealing with. In other words, it ensures that you can be sure of the signature of that person. Okay, so that is the concept of digital signature. In order to have this concept of digital signature, which is, by the way, digital signature is allowed throughout the world. I don't know throughout the world means, most of the world it is allowed. But then it requires a public key infrastructure. And the public key infrastructure will have people what's known as certification authority. So the certification authority is the one who assures that the private key The public key is that in other words, you get the public key from the certificate authority, but they assure the public key is the public key of the person who has the corresponding private key. Okay? So that way, when you go to certification authority, when you get the public key of, say, the party you're dealing with, you can be sure it is the right public key. Okay, so the certification, and there's a lot of protocols between you and the certification authority that, we won't go into detail, but that ensures, once you have the good public key infrastructure, and if you get the key from them, the public key of them, it assures it belongs to the right person who has the private key, okay? And that is what is known as digital certificate, the digital certificate. So the whole thing depends on essentially having a public key infrastructure. In India, they do have a public key infrastructure to do this. And the public key infrastructure itself is sort of it is not just one certification authority. There are a lot of certification authority. They themselves are done in a, in a tree-like fashion. There is certification authority, then a higher level certification authority, then even higher level. So if you want to get certificate of a particular thing in your own thing, all you need to do is traverse one step. But if you want to go throughout the country, say you're sitting in Tamil Nadu, the other person serving from, say, Kashmir, you may have to do so several times to get the public key of that person on the other side, okay? So, but anyway, everything is organized as a tree fashion. The public key itself, the structure itself, the certification authority, they have all the right protocol. It has been working for more than 20 years. You can trust they're all hack-free, okay? So generally, it is a very workable way by which you can say, if you use the right public key, private key combination from a good certification authority, everything should be fine. Signature, you can be sure you are digitally signing correctly, okay? I don't want to go into more details than this, but I can give you some more documents to read. If you are in cybersecurity or computer science, if you any basic cryptography, you would have gone through these kind of topics. Okay. Okay, any question on this without going into too much more details?
The certification authorities are specific to a country or they are global level?
It could be around big countries, but I don't think India allows certification authority to go outside India. In Europe, it goes across countries because they have a European Union. I don't think in India they allow one party to be India, other party to be here. It's very simple. See, even if you allow that, if there's a contract dispute, how do you resolve it? Because you don't have too much authority, somebody is sitting in Turkey. So you may allow all these things, but at the end of the day, when it comes to enforcement, you don't have any choice. So I'm pretty sure India does not allow certification authority to cross India, okay? So, same thing with the US. I don't think we allow outside India. See, what happens is sometimes you have suppliers in a huge market, you have suppliers and all those things, you sign all the contract, they're all over the world. I'm not sure how they manage it with the thing. There may be, even if suppliers outside, they may have to have a presence inside the country to make all these things happen. That's my belief. Okay. Okay, so let me see how much time we have. Okay, so now let's look at get back to the legal aspects. Okay, before that, let's just see what are some examples of e-contract. The first one is, technically, if you enter an email contract, even though it may not have all the signature validity, it's still a contract. Okay, the main thing is, you know, there must be some earlier communication to assure the person you are dealing with is really the other party. As long as either side or one side can prove I am dealing with the right person, it is the contract. I mean, there's a possibility somebody is spoofing, in which case, you know, the other person, hey, you are not signing with the right person, so I cannot enforce it. So as long as, you know, somehow you can prove the email you're exchanging with is the right person, okay, it's not being spoofed. Okay, so as long as it is valid. Okay, so be careful, you know, whatever you put down in writing, it is writing. It is a contract. Shrink wrap. Okay, what is shrink wrap? Often, not nowadays you do shrink wrap that much. In the olden days, maybe even 10 years ago, your order software will come to you in a disk. The moment you open it and insert in your disk reader, you have accepted the contract. That's why it's shrink wrap. The moment you unwrap and put it in your CD-ROM driver or whatever, it becomes a contract, okay? Otherwise, they won't even let you in, okay? The moment, you know, explicitly they don't ask you to click anything. You opened it, you installed it, that means you agree to it. What will happen is usually the shrink wrap, in the CD, there will be, in small print, there will be a contract. Okay, I don't know how many of you can read because it will be like, you know, it's like size 6 of the, or 10 at most, very hard to read. You need a magnifier. Okay, and then click wrap contract, which normally you do online. If you want to install before it, you have to click and accept all the thing, how you can use it, how you cannot give it to somebody else, how you will not misuse it, all those things you agree, and then only the software that you are trying to install will open and then you install. Okay, that's all click wrap contract. So what I'm trying to tell you is, often you think you're not doing e-contract. You have already done many e-contract when you have done all these things. The only problem with all these things is you don't have a lot of power. If you want to use that software, you agree to that big vendor, whatever they demand. In other words, in some ways, the parties are not equal. It is, you know, it is one big guy dictating, you follow me, otherwise I won't give you service. But it is there. And also when you order a product from online shopping thing like Amazon, okay, you are already agreeing to their terms, okay, that, you know, whatever it will be, if you deliver it a week late, you shouldn't be suing me. All kinds of things they will specify. You should pay within, and the moment it's delivered to you, we are going to charge your credit card for it. All these things up front, you agree to it. Okay, and so anything you do on Amazon or it is technically an e-contract because you signed everything even before you try to use it or try the product shipped to you. Okay, and also even drawing money from ATM. It's a, you know, when they give you an ATM card, you agree to all the conditions of the ATM usage. Okay, so I don't know how many of you remember reading anything when you get an ATM card. You know, essentially you agree to a lot of things. You agree to not misuse it. You agree not to, you know, do anything illegal. All those things you agree. So that is ATM, use of ATM, it's an electronic contract. Okay, the contract, before getting ATM card, you may seen that the contract sometimes in a physical form, but you are still drawing money from ATM. So the online transaction is being guided by whether you did the contract online or offline. Still it's online. Okay, so that's sort of a ATM, how you signed to agree to the ATM thing. It's not, you might have done in a physical form, but it still assumes it is an electronic transaction that's online. And then India allows real estate PNS, lease agreement, things like that on online using software like DocuSign, okay? And so you're already doing it. Perhaps you could make use of it more, which people like me we do. In the US, we sign everything online, including purchase of real estate and things like this. I'll come to it in a minute. E-contracts are a key part of modern business transactions and have become more prominent due to the increased use of modern technology, internet, web, cell phone, and so on. So technically you can do e-contract outside your country, but the problem is the enforcement, okay, and validity, okay. India may say, look, I don't know how to help you if you sign somebody from, say, Istanbul, okay. Okay, why is it happening? Because you are doing everything at the speed of internet. Before that, if somebody is signing with the owner from Bangalore, they have to come to Trichy, and then you face to face, and then you sign it, and all those things are not there. Everything online. So as long as somebody lives, within India, you can do this. At the speed of the internet, and parties can be anywhere, technically anywhere, but in this case, usually within a country. Okay, so it is becoming more and more common now. Okay, India still does not allow certain things online contract. Okay, you cannot do power of attorney online. You cannot do trust deeds online, and will and any other testament, disposition, whatever name it's called. Part of the reason is a lot of things require sanity of the person much more so than anything else. Okay, and it's, you may be subject to, you may do all this electronically, but under duress or sometimes, so they just want to make sure it's not, you don't do this, okay. Even in the US, you have to appear in person for trust deeds, and a notary has to be present. Otherwise, during the time the property divided, whatever, it's very hard to make sure that it is a valid trust or deed or whatever. Okay. And generally you cannot do, as I said, will and any other testament or disposition, or whatever name called. Okay, in India also you cannot really do the real estate transaction or any property, even 5%, 10% timeshare, none of it you can do online. Okay, you have to be physically present. Okay, usually in the place where the real estate is, okay. It may change, but right now that is those are the restrictions. I think it's for good, but again, some of this might go away. Restrictions might go away. Okay. Okay. So now, so in general, if you use the public infrastructure, a lot of the things are taken care of, but you don't have to use only public infrastructure. India provides many other ways you can do electronic signature. Okay, so but you have to include a mechanism to verify the linked person signing the document. Okay. And one simple way to do it could be achieved by a unique email ID of the person or by sending an OTP to the signing party's mobile phone. It gives you a little bit more authentication, but it still could be a fraud. But usually authentication, two-factor authentication ensures the authenticity of the person. Okay, that's why many times the banks require OTP. Okay. And also, ahead of time, you have to get a signing party's consent to do business electronically. Okay. So in other words, there'll be a lot of statement to that effect that they are signing it, these are the benefits, these are the pitfalls, do you agree, do you still want to do this electronically, okay? And you wanted to get this signature before you do that. If you're a good lawyer, they will make sure of all these things. But for two individuals, if it's only worth $1,000, you may not do this, but then you may get into trouble, okay? So, okay, and any changes to the document or signature must be easily detectable. Okay, see, in the public key infrastructure I talked to you about, you cannot change because you will detect the change. You're getting the hash, and the hash, you're sending everything encrypted to the other side, but the other side decrypts it. The hash of the decrypted document should match with the hash that was sent over. So that actually proves it, but if you can do it outside the, any other means, it's okay. So basically you should be able to prove the document or signature has not been tampered with, okay. And generally they require progress audit trail. Now if you use systems like a DocuSign, that takes care of everything. They will record every time you log in, they will record every change you make and the parties have to sign. See again, when you use systems like DocuSign, you can change, modify contract online. In fact, in the negotiation stage, there will be a lot of changes, okay, back and forth. Okay, and you sign each time, all the parties have to sign the changes, and they track progress all the time. Yeah, and generally final document with the signature should have a tamper evident seal. It has not been changed. This is the final, okay, and somehow you have to make that, prove that, okay. Take a look at the time, 12:01. Okay, now let's just look at the what does India provide? Okay, India provides this. This is the public key infrastructure I would talk about. India does have one, so which is a third-party service by subscribers, key party generation. So they do securely store a lot of these things. In India, it is required the public key certification authority generates the private key as well and give the private key to the one side. In many systems, private key will be generated by the individual, and then they may either give it to certification authority for safe storing, or they don't have to. Okay, but I think in India, both public key and private key are generated by certification authority and give to the India also I can do that? Okay, all right. Okay. So good, thanks for correcting. Okay. So essentially, anybody can have the private key, doesn't have to give it to anybody, because you shouldn't trust just because a government, a certification authority, you don't have to trust. That's the good point, yeah. Okay. Yeah, as I said, that's the one. India also allows what they call Aadhaar e-KYC services. I have not used it. You have used it, if it works. That basically provides a lot of authenticity, I assume. Okay. And if you use the digital signature, you usually get the digital certificate from the certification authority, which certifies that the public key is the right public key of the person who has that particular private key. Okay. So, and again, a lot of to do with, the person who has signed it is indeed the person who signed it, as well as nothing got modified when you got it. Similarly, when this person signs it using his private key and send it back, again same thing happens. Okay, so everybody can be sure, all parties can be sure, whoever signed on the other side or multiple sides, they're all valid people. Okay. And if you do things like DocuSign, they takes care of everything. Okay. There are a lot of other software. DocuSign is the one I am pretty familiar with. Okay, so before we move to this topic, any question on the e-contract or e-signature? Okay, so what is happening is, since so many transactions are done online, you probably only worry about the big stuff, okay? But every day, you buy 500 rupees worth of this, 500 rupees worth of that. You do all the time online transaction. You do all the time deal with the banks. But every time, there'll be issues. The issue would be simply, you are, just before the wedding, you want, as Prakash mentioned yesterday, you want the perfume. And they can't, the other side says they'll deliver and they don't deliver, or flowers, okay, and you don't get over it. You get very angry. They basically messed up the best day in your life, okay? And it constantly happens. They deliver the shirt before your big day, going for an interview, and doesn't happen, or they don't deliver the tie that you want because all the old ties have stains in them. Okay, so all kinds of things happen. Okay, and so usually what happens is, most of the time things don't work the same way that you agreed to ahead of time. It could be usually delivery, the quality can be a broken product, whatever. Okay, so a lot of times you can resolve this issue with the vendor or service provider, but small vendors, small service providers, they may not agree to it. Things like Amazon can do that, or Flipkart can do that, but often, if you buy from third parties, they may not agree to this, okay? They said you misused it, okay? But usually online, they're all very nice. They go out of hand, unless you are a repeat offender as a consumer, okay? You basically order 10 different pairs of shoes and you return 9 of them, okay? And then you basically, they know, you are the kind of guy who, just because it's a free return, you are misusing the system, and then next time they say, no, I'm not going to do that, but then you have to take it to the court, okay? But you might say, it's the shoe, I want to try every pair before I will agree to it. So there's a lot of places where contract is not completely fulfilled, or there's a difference in agreement, difference in understanding the terms, okay? And for each one, you cannot be going to court. Okay, and also if it's going to court, it also often involves, where do you go to court? Okay, so often, your ship guy might be from Punjab, and you are sitting in Chennai. Okay, and yesterday we talked about jurisdiction. They may not be present, the vendor may not be present in Tamil Nadu. So, technically you should be able to sue the person or meet the person in court in Chennai, but they will say, I don't have an office in Chennai, come to Bangalore, come to, Chandigarh or whatever, okay. So the whole thing is, in the electronic contract, the convenience was that it bridges distance. Now it creates problem, the same distance now creates problem when it comes to enforcement. Okay, so in other words, this is where everybody says, internet is great, everything is great, right? They're all true. As long as everything works, the moment something fails, whatever seemed to be, that you overcame now becoming an issue. In this case, the distance. Okay, in this case, jurisdiction. You know, you're not in Tamil Nadu, you cannot speak Hindi, at least I can't speak Hindi. Okay, so the whole point is, you know, whatever originally was nice, not anymore. Okay, so what happens is, India is also figuring it out. You know, a lot of these things, so we need alternate dispute resolution mechanism. There are basically two forms, and sometimes they are combined. Okay. One is arbitration. Okay, in the case of arbitration, again, arbitration is nowadays also done online. Okay, you don't have to go in person, face to face. Then it defeats the purpose. You might also go to court. Okay, so parties submit their dispute to a neutral third party arbitrator. Okay, the proceeding are similar to litigation, but it's less formal. There's no stress involved. There's no technically even taking a vote and saying all these things. It's much gentler. And basically each side presents the case with the others. The arbiter basically decides who is at fault, how much they have to pay, what is the compensation. By the way, there's no punishment, just a compensation. Okay, in other words, it's not criminal. It's still everything, civil. There is no punishment, there is no penalty. Simply they try to resolve it to the best. Okay, so usually arbitrators are also themselves the lawyers, or more like judges. And the arbitration is binding. If you spend the time, you have to accept it. Okay, but if you don't accept it, you have another choice. Up front, you have to go with arbitration. Once you get into arbitration, you have to accept the decision. Okay. So even for arbitration, because decision is binding, a lot of people take their lawyers with them. In other words, it is easier than the court, but you still spend money in having good representation, because many people are incapable of verbalizing their problem. Okay, and because they basically freeze in front of whenever they have to talk to somebody or whatever. The whole point is, arbitration, you still have to present your case nicely. You still have to say the history of what happened. You still have to say, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did that. The other person said yes, and all sorts of things. So you have to you have to have all the records to prove that you did everything right and the other person didn't. Okay. So often that requires a professional, often a lawyer, to help you. Okay. Okay, so in the case of mediator, they are much more, even more informal. Okay, so what they do is they assist the disputant in arriving at a mutually acceptable solution themselves. In other words, they are in the room, they don't tell you what is right, what is wrong. They basically allow the two parties talk in civil manner. Okay, the moment they get into, verbal disagreement, they stop, they leave the room. So the idea here is have a neutral person who knows how to deal these kind of tensed moment, be in the room, set ground rules, and make them talk so that the two parties resolve themselves. Okay. So, the person who is mediator needs a lot of skills to be an effective mediator. Okay. And so often what we do is, mediator is very good when you have an ongoing relationship. Okay, for example, somebody is supplier for your business. You don't want to be fighting with that person all the time. You just want to dispute the result and then move on, still continue to buy from them. Okay, and similarly for them, you are their buyer, they want to be in good terms with you. Okay, so often business relationship is, you cannot easily terminate. Okay, because it's sort of ongoing, you got into trouble once, but you need to move on after resolving this. Okay, so I think if that's the case, mediation is the better alternative. Okay, and by the way, for both arbitration and mediation, there is a cost associated with it. Say if your product is only $1,000 worth, or your shirt is only 1,000 rupees, okay, do you want to spend 300 rupees in resolving the issue, okay? And that's not the question you have to ask. But then if you don't do it, the same vendor may do the same thing next time as well. So, you have to, usually the best way to resolve some of the small ones is to directly deal with the person, but then go for mediation whenever you could. If that doesn't work, go for arbitration, okay? Okay, so mediation is generally less expensive than arbitration because you are resolving it yourself. In fact, it may even be removed from the court document, for all I know, okay? So there's no, I mean, they may not, because if somebody keeps coming to the court all the time, they want to maybe keep track of it, okay? Anyway, mediation is non-binding, okay? By the way, mediation is non-binding. So you may sit for 2 hours, 2 days, nothing may happen, okay? So in which case you have wasted your money, and then you have to worry about, in fact, the big party in the thing, they may actually go for mediation, not resolve anything. They can afford to spend a lot of time in the mediation, but then they will make you go away. So that's the tactic they might use. So when you deal with the big companies or somebody who is bigger than you, you got to be very careful because they have more power. Okay, so in that case, maybe arbitration is better because it's binding. Okay, but again, what I'm telling you is, e-contract or the way life is going, and you like it or not, when you get a service from many of these people, you already agreed to it. The question is, they have more power over you, but how do you get things done? It's what many of us as the consumers face. In the US, you can complain to Better Business, a bureau which tracks all the vendors, all the thing. So you can go to various places, lodge complaint against them. Okay, increasingly people are also going to various websites to write review. And again, there are a lot of, there's a lot of rules regarding that. We'll talk about tomorrow in e-commerce. Okay, sometimes, it's called the online disparagement, okay? If you go and write in some intermediate website, which basically says, this contractor is a terrible contractor, he didn't do all these things. This, I bought this from Amazon through some third party, this is what happened. You can go and complain all those things, which is very visible. But then the website you write to, they are what's called intermediary. And the intermediaries are not responsible whatever goes into this. This is called, yesterday we briefly talked about it and we'll talk about it again. It's what's called safe harbor legislation. They are not responsible for the content that's on their website. However, if the court finds that the complaint against them was invalid, if the court said they have to take it down, the intermediary is responsible for taking it down. So anyway, the main point I'm trying to say is there is a way in which you can express your discontent when you are not happy with the service you got. So I'm going through intermediate platform. And that is allowed. I'm sure in India also it is allowed. And that's some venue you can take. But before that, make sure what you are writing is really true, because they can sue you for disparagement, okay, business disparagement. So, you know, again, when you write something nasty, be nice and nasty. In other words, measure your words. Just to stick to the what your complaint is. Don't say this person is bad, blah blah blah. Just say the fact. Don't use even characterization too much. Just say the fact and leave it alone. Okay, so that is this session. I'm sorry. Pardon me?
The choice and appointment of arbitrators. When is it decided? Upfront, before the contract?
Oh, no. You go to arbitration only when you have a dispute.
Both the parties have to agree on the choice of
You basically file with arbiter, and then they will contact the other party, and then they can say whether I want arbitration or mediation. So both parties have to agree on the method and all those things, yes.
on the choice of the arbitrator you can choose.
I don't know whether you have a choice.
Both the parties have the choice. They can choose a single arbitrator or two arbitrators. And then there are institutional arbitrations also, that there is an institute or an organization, they have a panel of arbitrators. So they are very neutral arbitrators. You go to the institute and they select you. So there are two methods. You can also, if both of us have a dispute, we can choose sir as an arbitrator. That's not an issue.
But the trigger is always a dispute, or an e-contract can
They can
specify.
decide it before, during, in the agreement also, if there is a dispute, this person will be the arbitrator. Or they can decide it afterwards also, that once the dispute arises, yes, this person will be our arbitrator. So both the parties have a say. Until and unless both the parties agree on the arbitrator, that person cannot be appointed as an arbitrator.
Understood. And the fees for the arbitrator is shared, or?
Shared.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, also in many contract, especially with the big companies, there will be a small print that says, you know, any mediation arbitration can be done only in this state, only in this city. So they will put a lot of restriction what you can do, okay? So you have to follow that and then choose an arbiter. So if it's an equal size, then you have some more choice. With the big people, you have a less and less thing. They just make sure that the arbiter a little bit nicer and a little bit fairer to them. Okay, so yeah, good point. Thank you. Okay, any other question? I think the session, basically, I just want to tell you that you have been involved in a lot of e-contract without you knowing about it. Chances are you are going to get into more and more of them, okay? And, India has a lot of rules about contract, but when it comes to fine details, if you have overlooked or the terms you didn't understand, there is a good chance that they can get into trouble. And also, not every time vendors are purposely dishonest. They just make mistakes like everybody else, especially delaying product, the quality being not good. This is something we have to deal with. I almost buy everything online. Generally, through Amazon, generally they take back things I do, okay. They also know I spend so much money with them, they try to be reasonable. I also try to be reasonable. I hardly return things because they track how many things I return as well. Okay, so it's all part of way of doing business, and go into all the dispute issues only when it's really required. Okay, but the mechanisms are there. Okay. All right, that sort of ends this session. Where are we now? Okay, but we are 5 minutes sooner. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Arbitrators for lawyers? I don't know, she might know.
Generally they are lawyers and judges, but as I said, that sir can also become an arbitrator. It's just that we should both have trust and confidence in that person, that this person will be fair, right? And sometimes we also choose some experts, like if we have a dispute in business, right? So if they have previous experience, yes. So if they have field experience, sometimes we choose that person because that person has an expertise. But generally, as sir said, that retired judges becomes arbitrators because they know the law and everything.
Yeah.
Generally, they become the arbitrators, but then again, their fees is also high.
Good, I didn't know that judges become, retired judges become, okay. Okay, any other question? Okay, this has been a good session and a lot of good questions. Keep it up for next 2 days. This is the kind of interaction I would like to see. In many cases, you might know more than I do, and I think we want more participation. Okay, that way everybody gets the best of the minds. Okay, and Dr. Saroja, can we break or? Say it again, I'm sorry, come here. You want to wear this?
See, I have shared you the drive link today morning to upload the yesterday's assignment. So if you have done or if you have mailed to us, please upload it in the drive link.
Okay.
So for yesterday's assignment, that is for yesterday's assignment, we have shared the link.
Okay.
So let them do that.
Okay. So they can do next 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
10 to 15 minutes. They can.
Okay.
Once lunch arrives, I will.
Okay, all right. So basically finish the yesterday assignment. She has given you the link. Take another 15, 20 minutes, then we'll break. Okay?